New from West Hill Wagon Works, the diesel fueling point double track kit in TT120 scale for Co 55 track. Don't forget, if you use the PTTT120 at checkout, you'll get a 5% discount.
Hey gang, Chris here at PTTT120. Now before we dive into the excellent conversation that we have had with Ben and Mike from Revolution Trains, talking about all their exciting ideas and what they're going to be doing in TT120, there's some important information I need to get across to you guys. Now this is serious, so don't just skip forward. Okay? Now, with people like Revolution stepping up, and people like Manx Models, a small retailer, putting a lot of effort into TT120, we need to basically, I think we need to actually think about what can we do? What can we do to help this work? Now, it's all very good being part of the numerous Facebook groups, putting all our positive comments on there, but that stuff does disappear. Okay, what I think is possibly more important is, well, let's look at the ways that we can support this scale. We can actually order stuff, buying stuff. That's number one, right? So you can buy directly from Revolution Trains. Their link to these wagons are going to be in the description below in the More tab. But you can also support our local retailers if you want a more one-to-one kind of personal shopping experience. And Manx Models is one of the approved retailers, so you can pre-order from Manx Models as well. Okay, now with some of those retailers there's no discounts, but some of that pre-order can be done with no deposit put down, like you have with Hornby. If you're pre-ordering with a Revolution, then there is a deposit to be paid. Okay, it's more of a direct confirmation that you are ordering. Now, the other thing we can do, okay, and not just for my channel, but I think the other channels that are specifically TT120, is like, subscribe, it's free, and leave positive comments, because our channels are being watched. They are being watched by the manufacturers. I can promise you. I know designers and managing directors of numerous companies that are involved in TT120, or not as well. I know there's people from the other firms that so far haven't dipped their toe in, are actually subscribed to my channel, and I would imagine they're subscribed to some of the others as well. And now those people, they all employ people who look at social media, and so what we do here does actually feed back to them. Okay, I think it's really important. Get on board, get involved. Okay, over the past 90 days, I have something like over 6,000 individual YouTube accounts looking at my content. Only 1,500 of you subscribe, and thank you to the 1,500 who do subscribe. Much appreciated. But you need to get involved. If you are holding back because something's not happening for your era or your timescale, get involved. This is how you're going to directly affect what's potentially going to be happening over the next couple of years. I promise you. Talking about affecting what may come in the future, there is a Revolution on Revolution Trains website. There is there's an area, and I shall show a picture up here of where to go. Okay, these images here will show you the process to get to. It's a form that you guys can fill in, telling Revolution Trains exactly what it is that you're interested in. Right? It's a proper feedback form. Don't bombard it with Stephenson's rockets, because they're not going to do it. Right? But you will notice if you do look through Revolution Trains website, that they're not just all Era 11. They've got things like there's the 313 multiple unit, which I think started in the 70s and has been operational up to 2023. If that's what you're after, tell them. Okay, this is the kind of information that they need. Anyway, enough yapping on. Let's get on with the video. Okay, see you soon.
Pre-order now from Malx Models, approved stockist of Revolution Trains' new TT120 range. Right, so let's get on with the next episode of Let's Talk TT. We've got the guys from Revolution Trains. So please, Ben, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello, I'm Ben Ando. I'm a founding director of Revolution Trains.
And Mike?
Yeah, my name is Mike Hale, and I'm also a director of Revolution Trains.
Excellent. Greg, would you like to tee off with our first prepared question?
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you very much, guys, for joining us again. We thought we'd start with a background. Can you tell us a bit about how Revolution Trains began and why and what your vision for the company is?
Yeah, sure. I mean, thanks for having us, guys. It's much appreciated in light of our announcement last week. So background to Revolution was, well, we're 10 years old this year. And Ben and I set up the company because we wanted an engaged Pendolino. And on the back of that, we did a crowdfunding exercise, which narrowly missed its target, but gave our manufacturing partner confidence to go ahead with the project anyway. And we thought, well, if you've done an 11 car multiple unit, any other model you do after that must be easier. So we'd already incorporated the business to do the Pendolino. And we sort of took it from there and started doing some wagons and then locomotives.
Excellent. Why the interest in TT120? I know why we're interested in it, and it's nearly, I suppose, in about 3 months' time, it's going to be 3 years since Hornby announced it, and PK was obviously a bit before then. How did you feel when you guys first heard it come out?
I think that there have been rumours, well, fairly strong rumours about Hornby's interest in TT for quite some time before it actually became public. I think the big surprise for us was probably the choice to go for 120 scale rather than the sort of 3 mm to the foot traditional TT scale. But that decision to go for TT 120 was actually probably the appeal for us, in that it was the first time in the UK market we had a match between the scale and the track gauge. And we just thought that was a fantastic opportunity, that if you're going to try and start a new market, that why not go for something where you've actually got that alignment between track and scale. And that was really the sort of genesis of our interest in the scale. We thought that here's an opportunity to do something really new and interesting and accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for us, that scale gauge thing is something that I've always admired in O gauge. Right, there's two problems there. One, I can't afford it, not to the length of what I want, and I don't have the space for it. And I think that's been something similar for everyone else. Right, Greg, you've got a question next, haven't you?
Yeah. Can we check then your own thinking? You've got the announcement there. You thought, yeah, I can see why they're doing this. It's true to scale. But then you've obviously got your own back catalog, your own things you're working on. Why this particular model, the MMA, JNA? I don't know all the acronyms for it, and then also why these liveries particularly? You've got the red, grey, blues, silvers, greys. You've got quite a good variety out there. How did that come about?
We were sort of talking almost from day one about sort of where we could perhaps sort of leap into the market, and what would be the best way of sort of de-risking things, and also trying to complement what other people were doing. And it became pretty obvious that there were sort of two or three obvious choices from our range that we've already done in either Engage or Double O, that if we were going to do something in TT, that we probably wanted to pick one or two of the more obvious choices, and the MMA, JNA, Volkswagen being one of them. I guess the main reason for prioritizing that wagon is it is relatively simple. It's been our bestseller by a considerable margin in both N gauge and double O gauge. So that made it a relatively simple decision to say that if we're going to do something, we'll do that. And also, we felt it complemented Hornby's 66 very well. And that probably answers sort of part of your question about liveries, that we very much looked at what liveries Hornby were producing for the 66 and thought, right, which of our liveries have sold best in N and double O, and how does that fit in with what Hornby are doing in terms of the 66s? I mean, that's probably fair, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, certainly with regard to what Hornby are doing, we did look at what they were doing and think about to ourselves, well, it's pointless doing, well, what we had noticed they weren't doing was a big modern wagon, certainly in the early stages. And we thought, if you're buying a 66, and I personally have got a 66 on pre-order, I've got a GBRF one on pre-order. I'm really looking forward to it arriving. And I was thinking, well, what will I put behind it? I can't really put TTA tank wagons behind it because they're pretty much all gone from the network now. There's just a handful, I think, surviving. Yes, there's a KFA container flat coming. Yes, there's the Arnold design of container flat, which is much more associated with continental use, although they do run in Britain. But something like a big box wagon, as Mike said, it's been our best seller. So it did seem like a bit of a no-brainer. We did toy with a few other ideas. Ferry vans, for example, because then we could take advantage of the fact that these models are the correct scale to be used in Europe by European customers as well. But in the end, we thought, no, we'll stick with the box wagon because it's the obvious choice for us.
Excellent. So, going on from that, now you've released it, and people are able to pre-order from yourself and also from retailers such as Mount Models, where you actually release this thing from. Is there a sales target that you would consider to be a success, or I mean,
the more the merrier. Yeah, I mean, I think that was probably the most difficult thing for us when we were trying to sort of, obviously we got a quote for producing it from one of the factories we use, and the big influence on price is always the volume that you expect to sell, and that for us in TT was a complete unknown. So I'd rather not say exactly what the overall figure is, but we've been fairly conservative about what we'd hope to achieve. But of course that means that it's easier for us to get there, and if we get there, it means that there's the interest in the scale that we hope, and that potentially leads into more models in the future.
So that's the kind of phrase that we all like to hear. What are your ideas of future models? Can we ask, would there be anything that would be not just to roll behind something, but to pull something along or to push it along? Any powered models in your thinking? Can you open the door to any of these internal discussions?
We've got some ideas for power models. I think it very much depends on how the market develops. I mean, some of the powered models that we're working on, particularly in double O, are probably quite new. Well, they are very new locomotives to the network. So things like the forthcoming Class 18s, Class 93. They might not be the most obvious choices, perhaps for something like TT. Perhaps you might want something a bit more established on the network to just give you a sort of broader range of potential sales and customers. There's also the possibility of multiple units. That we've done quite a bit of work in Engage on various multiple units. That there's probably 2 or 3 obvious candidates that we could look at doing in TT. But I mean, ultimately, this all depends on how big the market is. That ultimately we're a commercial company, and we have to make money so that we can pay people's mortgages and things. And that's the cruel, harsh commercial reality. But we're very hopeful that it'll pan out the way we think it will.
I would like to add here that we've seen and held and looked at and drooled over TT120 models. Mike couldn't stop himself from buying a Class 08 at our launch day the other week at Malk's Models. And I think, we are on board with the whole concept. We like it. We like the scale. We like the size. We think it offers great opportunities. And we think there's a huge opportunity there for us and for other manufacturers too, if they're interested. And certainly, I think what Hornby have done, the way they've launched the scale, is remarkable. They've achieved a lot in a relatively short period of time. And that's one of the reasons why we came on board, because we thought, well, it's okay. They do need other people to come in to show that it's not just a flash in the pan. And that's kind of one of the reasons why we're here. In terms of future models, yes, of course, we've got ideas. I think if people are interested, the simplest thing for them to do is look at what we already do in 00 and N, and because that would inevitably be our starting point, certainly for the first few releases, because we're not going to start looking at investing an awful lot of research and design time in something that we haven't already done, because as Mike has said, the market is untested and untried to some extent.
You guys have got a suggestions form, haven't you, on your website? In this video, either somewhere before or afterwards, I'll do some links and a quick explanation of how to get to that. And obviously, I will ask everyone not to bombard you with requests of the Stevenson's rocket because that's not your bag. But certainly the look through your back catalogue. I think the one that stands out to me would be the 59 because there's so much. Well, you can pull these wagons, but there's so much more that you can pull with that as well. If I was going down the DMU route, it would be that 313 you produced because that's got such a huge era cover, hasn't it? Although I suspect that the DMUs are a more expensive model to start off with. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, inevitably tooling up multiple cars is more expensive. But the way we always try and encourage people to think about it is, rather than be put off by the headline price, look at it as you've got a whole train in a box. So rather than buying a loco and say 3 coaches, you're actually buying that whole train ready done for you.
100%. Yeah.
It doesn't,
and that might really fit in well with a lot of these smaller layouts people are making. They buy a platform pack from whoever, and it doesn't hold 3 coaches, let alone an 11 or 10 coach HST. But they can have a little DMU pull up, fits perfectly on there in the space, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that plays into something like perhaps the 128 parcels DMU or the 120 that we're working on in Engage at the moment. So yeah, definitely.
Right. So now we're talking about powered models. When you're looking at, obviously, it's not as simple as just getting hold of the N gauge and zooming it up, or the O gauge stuff that you've also been involved in, dropping it down, or 00. But you've got a good starting point when it comes to the research, which gets you one step ahead, doesn't it? And now, just a little bit of feedback that we've had is that people are wishing that whoever does produce a loco, that they will consider a number of things, because a big proportion of the new people into this new scale have jumped on board because of the HM7000 app, which is a superb app. So obviously what they're looking for, and what they're quite often maybe a little bit disappointed by Hornby, is that Hornby have only produced one loco so far that will take a HM7000 18 pin, a decent size speaker chamber, and space for a power bank, which is the Class 43 in its 3 various guises. Are those kind of design considerations something that you will certainly be kind of like looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I'll hand this over to Bennett at a certain point, but yes, absolutely. I mean, HM7000 is probably a bit of an unknown for us because it's obviously very specific to Hornby. But seeing how that fits in with sort of general design considerations, it is very much something that we will factor in when we start looking at power models. Power banks, a friend of mine who's much more knowledgeable on DCC than I am says that for long wheelbase vehicles like multiple units and large locos, that really power banks shouldn't really be necessary, provided you've got the pickup design done correctly.
Okay, so this is where we have an issue with HM7000 app, is that my track laying is good. Okay, my Pico track wiring is good.
Yeah,
Okay, I can run an 040 over my track at the slowest speed, and I have no issues. The issues I have, particularly with the longer locos with more pickups, is that as soon as one of those pickups goes over a blank spot, like if you were using the Hornby track, if you're using one of their blank frogs, the chip goes, oh, there's a slight deviation in voltage.
yeah,
I'm going to turn myself off. It turns itself off. You lose the Bluetooth connection. You then have to turn everything off and on again. And it's 20 minutes before you got everything running again. And
yeah.
I nearly quit TT120 because of that issue. So now, by hook or by crook, and quite often by rewiring, every one of my locos now has a power bank. And it's not for the traditional reasons. It's purely to hang on to that Bluetooth connection. Now, there are a lot of people out there who have had no issues with that, but there's also a lot of people who have. And the moment they put a power bank in, it's completely resolved all issues they've had.
That
Which is
that's interesting. I mean, sound locos in particular have always been more sensitive to
yeah,
loss of track current, and that's true of all forms of DCC. But it sounds as though HM7000, because of the additional bits and pieces that it's got in it, um, yeah, that becomes even more of a consideration. Um, I mean, it's not impossible. You've obviously got a bit more space inside a TT120 model than you do in an N-Gage model. In N-Gage, it's always a balance between trying to put as much weight into the model or into the power chassis, um, versus the electronics that everyone expects as standard now. Um, I think we're pretty good at finding ways of trying to make fitting DCC decoders as simple as possible for people.
yeah.
Um, so, for example, on our 59 and forthcoming N-Gage 66, the real things have a lift-off engine cover. So we've just used that real separation in the body to provide a lift-off section in the model. So that's an easy design choice. Using modern decoder sockets, of which there are a multitude now, is obviously really important in terms of being able to put accurate lights in. So actually in terms of, well, the N-Gage 59 and 66, we're actually using a 28 pin decoder socket now. So it's the next version beyond the next 18.
Well, how many functions are you operating with that then?
A lot. And I mean, if you think on a real loco, a lot of the time, individual lights are individually switched.
Yeah,
So rather than DCC, people have been used to lights being grouped together to give the most common sort of
Sure.
sets of lighting functionality. But actually, we're getting to a point now where we can almost replicate what happens on the real thing. And we think that's really important, that actually it gives you so much more flexibility and customer playability as well, that you can have all sorts of weird and wonderful things like shunting modes and yard modes, that you perhaps can't with less functions, because you can effectively use the decoder like you would on a real loco as a set of switches.
So could we then possibly expect, if you were going to go down this route of producing as a loco, that you might decide to use the 21 pin HM7000 decoder?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, that'll boil down to space.
Because it's the same size. The
Yeah,
decoder's the same size as their 8 pin and their 18 pin. The
yeah,
only difference is that the 8 pin has a plug-in lead.
yeah,
The obviously the 18 has the neck socket, and then the 21 has the 21 pin slot for it to slide into. So yeah, that's really promising. Thanks, guys.
Can I
If
just
I could pick up
oh,
on what Mike said there.
sorry.
So yes, we we like to innovate. We like to do things that we think are necessary to make things accurate. He's absolutely right to point out that we went with the ESU, what they call 20, their 24, but if there's actually a next 28 decoder interface with 28 pins, so that we could do the correct lighting functions for class 59. We should bear in mind that we're actually at the very early stages here. We've only just announced one wagon. We actually haven't, studied in any great detail TT 120 existing chassis to see what is done usually. What we do in Engage though, and what we've done in 00, is we have a default which is that we'll always use the best decoder we can in order to get all the functionality we need. All models will come as a speaker fitted as standard, so it's very, very simple to upgrade to sound if that's what you want to do. But beyond that, we haven't really made any firm design choices yet.
Can I just reference that in the design process? Because I suppose your initial and speciality really has been in Hornby are trying to cram down the way. They're used to 00, and now suddenly they have less space to work in. You guys are used to N. You suddenly got a little bit more space. Does that make TT? How does that impact the design process for you?
Well, I think it makes it sort of feel that we've got a bit of luxury there. We have had to cram things into the 59 and the 313 and the 321 and the Pendolino and all the other models we've done in Engage. When we design 00 models, and we do feel, wow, we've got a lot of space here. And I think there will be incrementally more space in the TT 120 models. But the overriding thing we will want to do is get as much weight in as possible. That's the one thing you're trying to do, is get as much weight in as possible, because nothing makes a locomotive run well and have good haulage as having a lot of weight in there.
Great. Thank you. I think that's useful to get that little bit of insight from you guys. What about then you've got this launch? This has been the big news for us this last while in TT land. How have you felt the initial reaction has been, the initial pre-orders? Are you pleased so far with that response?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the launch itself, it was a bit of a we've been talking about what to do, when to do it for quite a while, and it was really sort of being invited along to Malk's 20th anniversary that sort of helped crystallize everything for us. It just seemed an obvious thing that there seemed to be a nice TT focus on that event, so it seemed a useful and nice thing to be able to piggyback off that. And the reaction's been fantastic, both in terms of the sort of level of interest, in terms of people talking about it and social media, and also pre-orders as well. I think I've been pleasantly surprised by the level of pre-orders. I know some of our retailers have already been taking orders as well. And some of them have been passing messages on to us about how pleased they are that we've jumped into the TT space. So yeah, I think it's been great. Long may it continue.
Right. So now we're all excited, and and the retailers are on board. And I think the community is going to be quite happy that you're engaging with the retailers too. And of course, people can still buy directly from yourselves, can't they? So I know you're not going to. I don't know if you're going to answer this question, but what happens next? What are we going to? I'm presuming we've touched on them on powered. I've got a gut feeling I know what it's going to be. We'll probably have to wait another day for you to tell us exactly what it is going to be. But wagon wise, there's got to be some wagon. If you're really happy, you've got to be now thinking, right, okay, what's our next wagon? And can you tell us now?
But Ben's already mentioned some of the sort of perhaps initial ideas that we had about using some of the ferry wagons that we've done in N or 00, as probably.
I love your car wagon. Sorry,
yeah,
the car wagon you do.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole host of. I think from our perspective, we probably want to get to the point where these models are in production, i.e., we know what the final sales figure is. If I'm being crude about it, that we've actually got a real piece of data beyond sort of just our initial estimates, that we can actually say, yeah, okay, we can see the clear size of the market. as long as we choose the right models, we can see a clear path for extending the range.
Yeah.
I think I think in terms of future models, that'll be the decision point, that when we start production of the MMA JNAs, that'll be the point where retailers have given us all their orders. We can add that to the orders we've taken directly, and we can sort of tot everything up and say, yeah, very happy. Or, sorry, it's bread and gruel for the next 6 months.
Do you have an idea when you might start production, or is that completely based on that reaction that you need to find from your retailers?
We won't delay production unnecessarily. I mean, do you want to talk about the development process, Ben?
Yeah, I think that might be helpful. So at the moment, the models are being drawn in 3D CAD. When we get those final models in 3D CAD, the various versions that we're doing, and we're doing 5 different versions which have different arrangements of body side ribs, doors or no doors, different brake equipment, whether it's mounted on the body or largely on the bogies, to reflect how the real ones are built for different owners and different leasing companies. Once we've got those CADs in, we'll get a final production cost. We'll know exactly how much it's going to cost to tool, how many different injection mold tools we actually need to make, and we'll also know how much it'll cost to produce each individual one in terms of actually putting the things together. Once we've got those exact costs, and we've got pretty good ideas from the quotes so far, because of course the factory has made these before in 2 scales, so they know what they're doing. But once we've got those costs in, then we will talk to retailers, finalize their orders, finalize pre-orders from our customers. We'll let them know that we're about to close our order book, so that they can take a decision as to whether they want to put some money in then and there or not. And then we'll put them into production. Now, in terms of how long each of those processes takes, I would expect us to be at the point where the CAD is completed and signed off within the next 6 to 8 weeks. Then it's a question of another 6 to 8 weeks to get tooled samples in that we can check and approve and check they run right and do what they're supposed to do. And then beyond that, really, it's a question of making sure that enough people know about it. Because the other thing, of course, is that we're having this conversation, 5 days or so after we made our announcement. At the moment, we've had no coverage in the model railway press, plenty of stuff online, of course, but we need to keep that marketing drive up. We need to keep new people finding out about this. I'm hoping that we'll get some coverage in the model railway press. We are actually paying for advertisements to announce, if you like, the TT120 offering that we're making. And then once we get things like decorated samples in, for example, we'll also usually want to wait a couple of months so that we can put photographs of the samples in the magazines, because that should bring in any last minute stragglers of people who suddenly say, oh gosh, that looks a bit nicer than I was expecting. I'll order some of those. And of course, bearing in mind that we're expecting the Hornby 66s to arrive around about October, November. I don't know exactly, but I'm just reading that the same as everybody else. And we're thinking, well, okay, as soon as people start getting their Hornby 66s, they might suddenly think, hang on, I do want something to put behind it. Oh, Revolution are doing those box wagons, aren't they? I'll go online and order some now. So there's a variety of other things that have got to happen before we get to the point of closing our order book, deciding, as Mike has said, whether the financials actually stack up, and then thinking seriously about what the next wagon would be, and even if there is going to be another, which of course I really very much hope there will be.
And are there any of those stages which you might have time to start going down that route of before you come to that decision, that don't cost you, that don't incur too much cost?
Not really, because as Ben mentioned earlier, I suspect the sort of second or third models will be something that we've already done the research part for. So it'll be a similar process. And it's really a question of what's the scale of the market, and really sort of having a better handle on what the scale of the market is.
Sure.
So realistically, I think we're probably sort of, even if you just think about the timescales Ben's just talked about in terms of CAD tooling, getting the first engineering samples, getting decorated samples, that probably already pushes you towards the point when Hornby are looking to bring out their 66. So towards the sort of latter quarter of this year. And that probably gives you an indicator of when we look to sort of start production, with the idea of it sort of arriving Q1, Q2 next year.
Yeah. A quick question for Ben, before we wrap things up. Ben, I presume you would be interested in feedback from our subscribers and from the people that we are in contact via social media and from the general TT120 population about whether or not they'd be interested in, well, almost more of the same. So another set of numbers in the liveries that you'll be producing, whether or not you produce, because there are some other attractive wagons out there, like the two axe, which is that kind of maroon brown with the big orange logo. Although obviously that's a bit of a chicken and egg livery, because the Hornby haven't brought out a 66 in a Freightliner. But then if you were to announce it, if everybody wanted one of those, maybe Hornby might go, do you know what? We could reprint these 66s in a Freightliner, and then everyone's happy. Or there's the classic VTG plain dark blue that is seen everywhere, that can often be just one or two in a rake of the others all over the country. Which I think was that a good seller in your other scales, that blue VTG?
Well, I mean, a few things to pick into there. First of all, I'm sure Hornby will do a Freightliner 66 at some point. They'd be crazy not to. And why wouldn't they? They've got other things like the KFA container flats that will run very well with a Freightliner intermodal 66. So there's every reason they would do that. In terms of other liveries, yeah, we picked and chose, as Mike has said, the best-selling ones in N and O. We didn't want to flood customers with too much choice, because we have found that there's a characteristic among customers to become paralyzed with too much choice, and they end up really not knowing what they should get. Which is one of the reasons why, incidentally, we put our sample consist diagrams on our website, so people can have a look at what the real trains were comprised of, what locomotive pulled what particular wagon or combination of wagons, so they can make a more informed choice about what they want to buy. In terms of things like the 2-axe one, for example, or the VTG Blue, we haven't said that we're only going to do these 5 wagons. If somebody wants to come along and commission us to do more, a retailer or even a group of individuals, then we'd be happy to do that. We've done that with many of the models that we've produced in the past, where there have been retailer exclusives or private exclusives. So that's certainly something that we'd be open to. Beyond that, yes, we are aware that there is going to be hopefully interest in other versions of this wagon, and it might be in the future that we'll do another run with different liveries and different numbers and so on, so people can continue to build up their collections.
Do you think there's a possibility of you doing your rear end train with a light unit that you currently do in the other scales, if you have enough interest in it?
We deliberately didn't include that for this run, just because it added a level of complexity and cost to things that, until we were actually sure how well the models were going to go, that we didn't want to add that sort of level of cost into things. The tooling that we'll do will cover that possibility for the future. But inevitably, people don't need as many light-fitted wagons as they do normal wagons, for obvious reasons. You're only ever going to have a maximum of 2 in a train, one at each end. So it becomes a sort of self-limiting quantity that you're ever going to sell of those tail lamp fitted ones. So we'll plan for the possibility, but we won't offer it, we don't think, in this run. We just wanted to keep things as I said earlier, sort of simple and straightforward and cost effective as possible, whilst we're all sort of, I say we're all, Ben and I are sort of fingers in the no, I was going to say fingers in the pie. That's not the right phrase at all. Sort of scrabbling around in the dark, shall we say, as to what the actual size of the market is and whether it justifies sort of offering more variations.
Finger in the air.
Yes, finger in the air would also have worked instead of finger in the pie. Finger in the pie. I clearly.
I like pie.
Yeah.
scrabble around in the dark if you want to, but
yeah.
No, I think that enthusiasm here is brilliant, and for us there to have Revolution on board has been a real uplift. I think we were, as you know, probably seen comments folk in TT120 where we're assuming that somebody else would break ranks at some point, and we're just waiting to see who stepped up to that. And so to have yourselves on board, I think, is an encouragement, but it's also a sort of compliment to this is not done for sentimental reasons. You're not here to be sentimental about this. You believe there's obviously a market here for your business. And I think that itself hopefully will prove to be the case. And so anyone watching who's not yet pre-ordered, do remember to go and find either their own website or your favorite retailer to do so.
And can I just pick up on something that Chris, you asked me? You said, what do we want feedback from people? Well, absolutely we do. I mean, we have joined Facebook groups. We're following your YouTube page as well. I mean, people will probably ask questions or put responses in the comments of this video, and we'd be happy to answer them if you don't mind us doing that.
Absolutely.
We're on the forums and stuff, so you know there is a way for people to contact us and tell us what they think we should know, and that might be their suggestions. It might be things we shouldn't do. I mean, you know, we're an open book at the moment, so more than happy to engage and interact with the TT120 community.
There's been some lively conversations already on some of the railway forums as to more perhaps general philosophical questions about TT120 in general.
Does tend to that effect.
Yeah, but we're quite clear. We, like you say, Greg, we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't believe that this was a runner. There is a commercial reality to all of this that we don't want it to be a complete failure and flop and everything. So yeah, we are committed to this, and we do believe that this has potential, and we just want to see how best we can help sort of complement what other people are doing and add our own little bits to the overall picture and ecosystem.
Guys, I can't thank you enough for your openness with this. I know that there will be some people almost inevitably demanding timelines and model details, which is just not appropriate, or it's not going to happen right now. And all they need to do is actually watch the video and listen to your answers, really, to understand that. But it won't stop them from writing down. But Ben, thanks for commenting on the fact that the YouTube channel does seem to be something that people are paying attention to. I know there's a number of other manufacturers and designers who do subscribe to my channel, and I presume some of the other TT120 channels too. I mean, certainly myself and Greg and a number of the other TT120 content creators, we're trying to be, I wouldn't say big it up, but we're trying to be as positive as is reasonable to be, without deliberately trying to sort of pull the carpet from underneath it. Gentlemen, would you take turns saying goodbye?
Yeah, okay. Well, goodbye, everybody. I hope this has been illuminating, if that's such a thing. And I'm sure we'll be talking to you all soon.
Yeah, thanks very much for having us, and goodbye to everyone.
Excellent. Well, it's a goodbye from me.
And a goodbye from him.
Silly sod.
Now, myself and Mac, we couldn't have dreamed that these guys were going to talk to us the way they've done. I mean, it's phenomenal. Nothing's set in stone. Right? This isn't a huge oil tanker like Hornby trying to change direction. This is a small company that can maneuver to what we want, which is why we want to continue with these kind of conversations, and why you need to go into their website, fill in their form, and tell them about what you want. You know, do you want more liveries for that for these new wagons? Is that something that you're interested in? There's a whole bunch of them out there. Are there other specific wagons that they've already done all the research for? Because that's the stuff that's going to really going to work for them in the short term is if you look through what they've done in N gauge, double O, and O gauge and go, okay, so these guys have done research in all of these things. They're more likely to happen. All right, so get on there, get involved. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Cheerio, bye.
And that's all there is to tell. I'll be on my way now, sir. I've got urgent business in the south. I have to meet a man at Marlborough Junction.